So I teach the Bible as literature on a small secular university campus in Southeast Arkansas. And you, who just clicked this video, you might right now be thinking, I bet you don't. You might think that in teaching this class, I'm really doing something else. You might assume that the Bible as literature is just a cover for teaching religious doctrine or worldview, my own personal brand of Christianity, my own sincerely held religious views. Or you might assume that I'm an indoctrinator of a different kind, one of the liberal elites pushing atheism or secular humanism, using the course to debunk or even make fun of religious doctrine or worldview. Because teaching the Bible as literature is a controversial topic. In this country, until the early 1960s, many public schools included Bible readings and prayer as part of the regular curriculum, with the biblical text often approached devotionally. Then, in 1963, in the case of the School District of Abington versus Shemp, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that legally or officially mandated Bible reading or prayer in school is unconstitutional. But the court included a caveat: high school and university students could study the Bible for its literary and historic qualities. Still, you may wonder if it's even possible to teach the Bible as literature, given the fact that the Bible is sacred to millions, given the fact that belief in the Bible has become a point of great division and debate in certain circles. And you would not be the only one. The students who take the course tend to approach it with some degree of trepidation, sometimes a great deal of anxiety. I would like to tell you truthfully that the course we offer is neither an affirmation of nor an attack on religion. It's not a course in historical criticism, not a philosophy course. It is a literature course, and there is great value in studying literature. Most of the students who take this course know this. They are English majors. Studying literature is their bread and butter. But somehow, a course on the Bible feels different. Sometimes it feels downright risky. Now, my own experience teaching this course is complicated by two things. One, I am myself a Christian. I attend a small Presbyterian church here in town. But two, I attend that church with my wife of 10 years. I'm one of the few out professors on campus. For many years, I sponsored the Gay-Straight Alliance here. So I am not exactly the typical Bible teacher. Consequently, the students who take the class, they tend to fall into the same two camps I described before. Either they expect a traditional Bible study, or, much more often, they expect to encounter a class that disproves the Bible as mere myth or fiction. And sometimes these students come to class really prepared, really defensive. I've had students who've been brought up in traditional faith communities who arrive prepared to defend their faith, to contend for the faith, to argue apologetics or young earth theory or geological evidence of the flood. Some of these students come into the course really fearful that their own beliefs will be challenged. It's as though they're gearing themselves up for a kind of spiritual battle. And then I have another group. I have students who have already encountered some hard feelings about the Bible. These students may have been wounded or excluded or shamed by religious people, religious organizations. Some of these students feel themselves ostracized because of their sexuality or their politics, or even because of their questions. And these students are sometimes really eager to hear that traditional belief in the Bible, which they may feel has been used against them, is intellectually untenable. So when I began teaching this course, I know I made a lot of mistakes. because I failed early on to take seriously, really seriously, the idea that I could, even unintentionally, do harm in a class like this. I could do harm by taking for granted a certain religious lens, which is easy to do, even for a Presbyterian. I could do harm by holding up examples of contradictions in the text, saying basically, see, it's not inerrant, especially if I did it smugly, or if I let my own history of grappling with the Bible, my own religious upbringing, make me hostile or contemptuous. Now, when I say spiritual trauma, what I mean are the injuries and hurts sustained when a person's sense of basic identity and security are, for whatever reason, turned upside down. I mean the grief and shock made worse by other people's judgment, by other people's insistence that the suffering person just needs to have more faith or believe in a certain way. But recognizing, becoming aware of the concept of spiritual trauma, which happened for me only as I began teaching this course, has fundamentally changed and strengthened the way I approach the teaching of all literature. Because I want to teach the Bible as literature. Because I'm a believer in the power of reading and studying great literature. So in this course, we begin with the book of Job, because the book of Job is arguably the literary masterpiece of the Hebrew Bible. It's so easy studying Job to get students to notice these literary elements. The text has this strange narrative frame. It's probably borrowed from an ancient Near Eastern folk tale, the part of the story most people know, in which God and the accuser make a wager concerning the character of Job. But the text includes much more than this frame story. The bulk of the book is this sustained debate in poetry, some of the most stunningly original poetry to be written in the ancient world. It is a literary tour de force, and it's easy to marvel and admire the poetic genius that must have been behind the writing of it. But this is not the only reason I begin with Job. This text goes right to the heart of the anxiety with which many students approach the course, because one of the major themes of Job is spiritual trauma. Job's friends, if you remember the story, they keep reminding him of what they see as absolute spiritual truth, that his suffering is the result of personal sin, that he's wrong to challenge traditional beliefs, that his isolation and confusion are somehow his own fault. I would argue that the book of Job has as its central theme the notion of spiritual trauma. And I would argue that the brilliance with which the theme is communicated is a level of literary artistry on par with the importance of its theme. And in fact, I've found, as I've taught various literature courses over the years, that when it comes down to it, when we talk about literature, we're almost always talking about spirit, the human spirit. The really important works, the works that move us and influence us throughout our lives, so many of these works deal with matters of the spirit, by which I mean our inner lives, our sense of purpose and meaning, our real, sometimes secret selves. I find that when I teach in other classes works by Natalie Diaz or Kaveh Akbar, Octavia Butler, Marilyn Robinson, Cormac McCarthy, the poems and novels and short stories that speak most forcefully to our students almost always bear witness to some kind of spiritual trauma, whether the trauma arises from addiction or racism or estrangement or cruelty. And these works always bear witness to the helpful and unhelpful responses to those traumas. In any literature, we always ultimately arrive at theme. You know as well as I that it's possible to make even the most beautiful work of literature really boring. You can talk for hours about alliteration or symbolism or allusion, and you can ignore the real heart of the work, the meaning or challenge to meaning that stirs us and moves us. Sometimes in a Bible as literature course, it's tempting to do that. But I don't want to, not with the Bible, not with any text. I want to talk about both craft and theme, and I'm not unusual, but it has been in the teaching of the Bible that I've come to understand how important it is, teaching any literary work, not to shy away from spiritual matters, how important it is to acknowledge the spiritual dignity of my students. Because somehow our students really respond to those works that bear witness to their own spiritual struggles. Somehow even encountering spiritual trauma in the pages of Job, or in the poetry of Lee Young Lee, in the novels of Toni Morrison, in the anguish of the Psalms or the calls for social justice in Esther or Amos, somehow just seeing and feeling themselves seen in these works, this really resonates with our students. This really meets a great need for them, for all of us who find ourselves encountered in literature. Thank you.